today to speak about the 50th anniversary of Apollo 11. I can remember sitting in class with a teacher discussing President John F. Kennedy's speech about why go to the moon at Rice University in 1961, when he committed this country to putting a man on the moon and bringing him safely back to Earth within the decade. He said, great nations do things not because they're easy, but because they're hard, and it certainly was hard. I remember doing the math on my fingers and saying, you know, I'm going to be old enough to be involved in that program. And my goal became to have my fingerprints on the rocket that took the first man to the moon. Make a long story short, 5 years later, I was an inspector working on the third stage of the Apollo rocket, one of the highlights of my life. Americans were united in those days in their zeal for space, the Apollo moon landing being the greatest technological advancement in the history of mankind. Some writers have described those times as a Camelot era, where people respected their president even if they didn't vote for him. Not since 9/11 have I seen Americans as united as they were around the Apollo program. Space, of course, is important to our national security. It's important to our economic prosperity. It's important to our technological advancement. I ask people how often they benefit from space, and the response usually averages 6% say they benefit from space once a year. 4% say they benefit from space once a month. And only 2% say they benefit from space once a week. And we won't even go to once a day. And I guess those people have roosters in the backyard to give them their weather reports. You know, they don't pay any attention to the images we have from the satellites. I guess they don't use cell phones or use credit cards or even make cash transactions because those are all satellite linked. And ultimately, space is important to us for the ultimate survival of our species. Neil deGrasse Tyson lectured our Science, Space, and Technology Committee several years ago on the benefits of space. And while he was here, he gave a lecture for staff and members over at the Jefferson Building's Library of Congress. Very well attended and well taken. And during his presentation, he mentioned that space is the only thing Congress really spends money on to truly benefit the next generation. And I believe that. I believe those are trees that we plant without the expectation of being around to enjoy all the shade. I want to thank my colleagues on both sides of the aisle on the Science, Space, and Technology Committee for helping keep space a bipartisan issue. I hope we can build on the legacy of Apollo 11 and that someday our children and their children can come together and enjoy positive achievements for their generation and generations to follow. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield back.